We need to wait for Leslie because she is um, Leslie Grant. I think
We
Dr.
can,
Will Cresses sent her the link.
yes, she has the link. I sent it to her this morning. She was copied on the board email.
Okay, so we'll give her a few minutes because she's going to be critical here.
I think she's going to present after I do. I did speak with her earlier, and she took a look at the PowerPoint, and so she's aware of what it looks like. I shared it with her when I shared it with you.
Okay.
So,
So yeah, so you want to get started because we do have another committee afterwards. So, Admir, we're ready.
Okay, you can begin.
You're on.
All right, good. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Kathy Evans Brown, the Vice President of Executive Affairs. And so we are going to continue our work with the Council of Great City Schools in efforts to improve student outcomes. And one of the mantras that they use is student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. And as you know, the school district exists because of our students. So assessments are critical in this work. The board adopted their guardrails last board meeting, and there's 4. And I'm hoping that we all look at them regularly because we are accountable just as we want our superintendent to be accountable for her goals and guardrails. The board has adopted guardrails and consequences. We'll be talking about those later on when our consultant from the Great City School, Council of Great City Schools, join us, Leslie Grant. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Dr. Williams, who will further her work with the goals that she was charged with, and specifically, she's going to include her interim goals as well. Dr. Williams?
all right. Thank you so much, Chairwoman, First Vice President, Dr. Evans Brown. Admir, if you can queue up, I'll talk a little bit while he's doing that. I want to say welcome to all of the board members and to any listeners that we may have on the platform this evening, as well as my cabinet members. So tonight, what I'll be doing is reviewing who we are in our work, and then talking about next steps as we are establishing interim goals and metrics that are going to help ensure that we are on track to meet our overall goals. The premise for our work is that student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors do. And that's a quote from A.J. Krabill. We're working along with he and Leslie to make sure that the goals that we've set for our students are achieved. So this will ensure that if and when we see any regression as we're monitoring goals, it's important to have interim goals along the way so that we know if we're on track or if we need to stop, modify, and get back on track so that we do everything that we can to make sure that we're helping our students and staff to meet our goals. So that's what tonight's presentation is going to be focused on. Admir, please forward. So for tonight, this is kind of a timeline. There's a lot that has happened over the last several months. We began this partnership with a 2-day retreat back in, I believe it was March. It was a robust and an intense time that I was able to spend with the board members, our board leadership, as well as with the consultants. And so that happened, that was kind of the kickoff to, where we would be moving towards. Fast forward a few months later, this board contracted with the Council of Great City School Consultants for a 2-year period. And that happened in a July board meeting. And at about the same time, the board approved our overall student outcome goals and guardrails at a board meeting. So the board approved 3 goals that I'll be going over just as a gentle reminder tonight. I think, I can't state them enough. I want them to stay at the forefront of the work that the board is charging me with, and at the forefront of all of the work that I'm doing with my leadership team and with our school teams and our district level teams. So I'm always talking about the 3 goals that we're focused on. Back in September, about a month and a half ago, Leslie was able to meet with members of my student leadership team so that we were able to roll out for them just at a very high level what this partnership entails. And then last month at the board meeting, the board approved guardrails to frame your work. And I think, that was work that was really courageous. And, it really, for me, it's work that I can get behind, because it's not saying do as I say, it's saying do as I do, and that we're all working in this together. So I say kudos. I think that was very encouraging and very courageous. And I believe for the later part of this meeting, there will be some more discussion around those guardrails for the board and where that work may be advancing to. It's important for me to say with this slide that it doesn't matter where staff, which department they're working out of, whether it is human resources, academics, public relations, athletics, finance, with our parents, legal, diversity, equity and inclusion, grants, intergovernmental relations, student support, CLRI, safety, OSA, operations, or IT. All of our work has to be focused in one way, shape, or form on the goals that the board has charged me with. And so as I've been meeting with staff and reviewing last year's work and talking with them about where I want to see their work going this year, I'm able to help guide how their work, because for some it's not as clear cut as if you were a principal or a teacher, but I'm helping them to guide and look at, if we say we're focused on ensuring that our 3rd grade economically disadvantaged students are going to meet these goals, we have to all make sure that those schools, those teachers have everything that they need. That's the priority. So I'm working with our staff to make sure that that happens. Next slide. So for tonight's presentation, myself and all of the staff that are on the platform who are within the executive committee or the executive level leadership, most of us are educators. And so mastery learning objectives it's something that we look for when we go in classrooms. What is the mastery learning objective? The same way that when we have board meetings or you go into conferences and you go to meetings, you're looking for an agenda. You want to know by the end of this meeting, what is it that I should know and be able to understand? And so that's the way that I frame this meeting. And by the end of this meeting, all of our board members and anyone who is listening should be able to articulate what our district's 3 goals are for this year, the 999. And I'll talk a little bit about that in case you've forgotten. But they should also be able to understand the interim goals and measures that will serve as predictors for if we are on target to meet the goals. And again, if we're not, then how do we make that a teachable moment and get back on track? So I have a picture of Martin Luther King. You know, that's kind of the why, because the time is always right to do what's right. And this is what's right for our children. Admir, next slide. So this slide is a gentle reminder for everybody on what our 3 goals are. What are the things that this board has approved and said will be the focuses for myself and for staff for this school year. And I do call these goals the 999 goals because there's a number 9 in each one of the goals. It's an easy, catchy way for all of our staff to know them, for our families to know them, our community partners, school-based partners. Everybody should know what these 3 goals are if they're working with our children. And we want our children to know what the goals are also. It was important that they be framed in a way that they're smart. So we're not just putting out there that we're going to achieve some goals someday, somehow. They're specific, they're measurable. And for the reading goal, you know, it's a big goal. What we agreed upon, what this board has charged me with, is that the percentage of 3rd grade economically disadvantaged students who will be proficient in reading as measured by the end of the year DIBELS assessment will increase from 33 to 39% by June 2024. And I could have been more specific in saying June 30th because that's when our school year ends. So I can amend and have that in there, but you see that there's that 9 where it says 39%. That's where we're headed. That's where we're going. Our mathematics student outcome goal is that the percentage of 3rd grade economically disadvantaged students who are proficient in mathematics as measured by the end of the year iReady assessment will increase from 13% to 15.9% by June 30th, 2024. And I know that that's a number that even when I say it, I'm not excited about, you know, 15.9%. But as I always say, you can't go from, you know, a lower rung on the ladder just to the top by just jumping to the top. It's, you know, a step by step, and this will be a step in the right direction. And finally, our 3rd goal deals with our graduation rates. And so for that one, the percentage of unofficial 4-year graduation cohort 2020 students, those would be our 4th year seniors right now, who complete district graduation requirements will not decrease from the 79.1% that we achieved last year. And we know that, you know, that's an uphill climb for us because the waivers that students were able to get across New York State because of the pandemic, they're not eligible for anymore. So we don't want to decrease. We don't want to go backwards. We just want to, if we can maintain that, that's going to be a stretch for the district. Admir. So I thought it was important for us to talk a little bit about some of the trend data. It's important to know where we're coming from so that board members are reminded and any public that may be listening that these are stretch goals. These are not just goals that we just, you know, picked out of the air, and, you know, there was hard work that went into looking at realistically, specifically, measurably, where we were, where we've been, and where we need to go. So if we look at a few years ago in 2021, we ended the year with 29% of our students reading proficiently. We didn't have the mathematics data available, but our graduation rate was 78.5%. The following year, it looks like a huge jump in DIBELS, up to 38%. And we know that that was during the pandemic. You know, students were taking their assessments in the home. There were a lot of factors that may have played into that score looking that way, but it went up to 38%. iReady, our mathematics score for 3rd graders, was at 16.4%. and our graduation rate was at 79%. So again, those waivers were in place for the year of 2021, 2022. And then we look at last year. And last year, our students went backwards in the end of the year DIBELS scores that we saw. We were at 33%. So we dropped by 5 percentage points. And for iReady, we also dropped 3.1%. In mathematics and for our graduation rate, we saw a very, very, very slight increase to 79.1%. So when the board met and had a rigorous discussion about where we needed to go, the agreement from the board was that 6% was a stretch, but it was fair, it was realistic. And so for the goal for this year, 39%, which would be an increase of 6% in reading. For mathematics, again, 15.9, an increase of 2.6%, and then 79.1%, no decrease with the graduation rate. And so I've talked a little bit about, you know, the pandemic, the learning loss wasn't just for the city of Buffalo students. You know, this is a learning loss that across this country students experienced because their lived experiences changed. Teachers' lived experiences changed. You know, students went through isolation, trauma, grief, anxieties. They had to learn differently. Teachers had to teach differently. And so there was a lot that went on over that 2-year period. But we are back in session now, and our work is cut out for us. But I believe that, you know, we will meet the goals that we have stated because we've been focused. We'll continue to be focused. We're going to continue to be strategic, intentional, and systemic. The next slide. Our question, or I should say really, you know, the board's question of me is, how will I, as the superintendent of schools and my staff, continuously and strategically measure whether or not this district is on track to reach the overall student outcome goals? That's a big question. You know, I don't believe in setting a goal and we hope that we get there. That would be just like me getting in a car and with no map, no MapQuest, hoping that I make it to Tampa, Florida. You know, so, you know, it probably wouldn't happen because I wouldn't know where to detour. I wouldn't know if I was going in the right direction. And so for us, we have to have ways along the way that tell us we're on track, we're progressing, or we're regressing and we're not on track in some places. And when that happens, then we have to be strategic and intentional about what do we do to support those schools or students where we're not on track, so that we're not missing opportunities. Next slide. And so this is a really important slide in this slide deck. I believe that language is important, and it's important that everyone know when we're talking about interim assessments, what are we really talking about? Interim goals, what are we really talking about? And so what we're really talking about is that we're measuring all along the year and analyzing data for a specific group of students to monitor growth and achievement that's connected to specific goals. Our goals are the 999 goals. So we will be measuring, collecting data, analyzing, supporting, monitoring, all of those things to help us to ensure that we're doing everything possible to get to where we need to get to. So the interim data and or assessments that for this year we'll be looking at is for DIBELS. We've already looked at our beginning of year data, and I'll share a little bit about that with you. Chief Botticelli was going to do a presentation at the last board meeting, but it was getting very, very late and we had students in the audience. And so we decided we would postpone that until this upcoming board meeting, but she'll be able to do an in-depth look at where we are with respect to our DIBELS beginning of year data. What is the data telling us as we compare it to last year's data? So we're going to look at that data, and then we're going to be looking at the middle of year data also to see if we are progressing. We'll do the same thing with the iReady data. The beginning of year data is still being collected and analyzed, but that will be coming before the board also, so that you know kind of what our baseline is. In addition, we'll be looking at, when we look at graduation rates, we have to look at right now for that cohort of 2020 students who are seniors, fourth year high school students, how many of them started the year with 16.5 credits, because that's an indicator, that's predictive that they should be able to meet state and district graduation requirements. And then we look again at the middle of the year, because we know that in New York State, we have mid-year opportunities for students to meet graduation requirements. There are Regents exams that students take in January. So that number could look very different in January. If a student still needs to take Regents and they take them and pass them in January, then those are additional credits they'll have towards being able to graduate in June. We'll also look at that group of students to see how many of those students have already passed 3 of those state Regents exams. We want to know how many are starting the year, because it's possible that they have 16.5 credits and none may be Regents, or some may be Regents. But the more Regents they pass, they have to pass 5. So the more Regents that they pass towards that 5 is an indicator that they're on track to be able to graduate. So those are the interim assessments that we'll be talking about. A small team of us had a phone conference with Leslie, maybe about a month or so ago, just to go over that, because what she shared, and we all agreed, is that, you know, the data has to inform whether or not we're going to meet the goal. That's what the definition shares. So could we have pulled all kinds of data that really would not inform if we're going to meet the goal? We could have said we'd look at 5-week progress reports, but are those the same skills that are being tested on the DIBELS according to the curriculum? No, they're not. So it wouldn't make sense for us to compare, oh, well, it looks like 99% of the students have an A or a 100 in reading, we should be on track. Well, maybe and maybe not. So we wanted to be very clear and very focused. So that's why we didn't put those as interim assessments. So when we looked at our interim goals, the goals had to be SMART goals. That has been encouraged by Dr. Evans Brown. That has been encouraged by Leslie. And so the goals here is that, you know, by the middle of the year for DIBELS, that 36% of our economically disadvantaged third graders will be scoring at proficiency. We want to end the year at 39%. If we make it to 36%, then that's progress. We're on our way. So we've got a middle of the year goal for DIBELS. We've got a middle of the year goal for our economically disadvantaged third graders in mathematics, and that is 14%. We will have moved from 13% to 14%, which is an indicator, again, that we're progressing towards that 15.9%. And this goal is, it's going to be an uphill climb, because when we're looking at our data right now, we got to pull out all the stops to help make sure that our students that are in this 2020 cohort will have 16.5 credits, 75% of them, and at least 3 Regents passed by second semester. Because right now, we've got quite a few. These are COVID students that, you know, started high school during COVID. And we've got quite a few that are right now at a deficit. So that means we've got a lot of work to do, to try to get them prepared and positioned to be able to graduate. In order to do that, we do have our SMART goals, we do have our interim assessments, but we can't ignore that there are so many other factors that are going to play into it. So I've convened executive level data team, and we meet every 5 weeks. And we're not just looking at these interim assessments, we have to consider things like attendance. We don't have any control over it, so we know we couldn't have that as an, one of our interim assessments or measures, but it's a factor. It's important. And when we pull the data to see, why we're not progressing in certain schools or on track to meet it, if the attendance is very low, that's an indicator that we got to get in there and we got to support getting the school what they need to help that to happen. We're looking at suspension data. If students are behaviorally having difficulties, then we've got a whole team of folks in a district this size that can go in and help interrupt some of that so that we can get them back on track. So they're in class, ready to receive the instruction and ready to learn. We are also looking at report card grades. We're looking at the progress report data that comes out. So when we meet as a team, we're going through with a fine-tooth comb, because first I want to see the district level data. I want to see the high level data. How are our third graders doing overall? Then we start breaking it down. I want to know what are those 5 or 10 schools where we don't see progress or we're not scoring where we need to be. Okay, now, when we look at those 5 schools, what's the attendance like? What are the suspensions like? What's the parent involvement like? What are the report card grades like? What, do the classrooms have highly qualified teachers in them? All of these things start to play into how can we then provide them with what they need to help us to get to where we need to get to. So that's the work that we're doing with respect to our interim assessments. Next slide. Now, where we are right now, when we look at DIBELS, last year, for the beginning of the year assessment, when we looked at our economically disadvantaged third graders, 29% were demonstrating proficiency at the beginning of the year. This year, I'm proud that, we're 4 percentage points higher. So we're already at 33% of our economically disadvantaged third graders achieving proficiency. That's an indicator to me that, if we continue to just go higher, which is my goal, then we should be on track to not only meet, but to possibly exceed what the goal is that we have stated. And I don't believe that, this beginning of the year number is just happenstance. It just happened. We just got lucky and that's where they are. I believe it is because, in our work with the Council of Great City Schools and with AJ and with Leslie and with this board, starting back in March, and we knew that this was kind of where we were going. We have been working in a deliberate, intentional, strategic, and very focused way. And you see there's a little stone there. We're not leaving any stones unturned. So when, we're looking at things like summer school, we were strategic. We specifically engaged parents to say, we want your children to be a part of summer school. When we're working with partners, whether it's the mayor, whether it's PAL or whomever, they got reading programs, we got to tell them what our goals are so that they know and can help to support that. The staff supports, when we were hiring this year, literacy coaches, reading teachers were prioritized. If we say we want to increase these things, then we have to put the resources behind them. We're working with Read to Succeed, which is another big partner. They're increasing the number of schools that they're in because we have these goals. When we look at professional development, our professional developments have to be aligned to what our goals are. So whether it's CLRI, Orton Gillingham, whether we're presenting at embedded trainings, at principal meetings, AP meetings, we're all talking with the same voice that these are the goals that we're focused on. Data-driven instruction is a big piece of what I've had the ASLs work on with schools. I want to see the data. I want it to be visual. I want everybody in the school to know what the goals are. I want our children to be able to articulate, because they can. As young as kindergarten, they can, if we use things that are developmentally appropriate for them. But I want our third graders to know, where am I in the data and what do I need? to move my data. The ASLs and CAI, which is Curriculum Assessment and Instruction, and our Associates of School Leadership, our Chief of School Leadership, our CLRI department has been out in schools doing classroom visits to support teachers with meeting these goals. We've been focusing on our instructional priorities. I sent home a newsletter to our parents. I'll continue to send out monthly some things to parents. It's not heavy reading. I don't believe in having paragraphs of reading. There are visuals. It's just one page. We get it translated. And it's just really sharing with parents some very easy tips, whether they're at the grocery store with their children, how they can help them, or some things they can do at home to help them. But understanding that all of our parents may not be comfortable trying to help their children with literacy because some of them may be struggling with it. So we do our Wednesday with Williams. We have little YouTube snippets that every now and then we'll be focusing on some tips, some things that they can do. It's something that most everyone has a cell phone. Most everyone is on social media, or they like them because they're quick, they're easy. It's a visual, and so we'll be using that. We're on the radio on Saturdays, and so there will be some Saturdays that will be allocated to that. We're trying to in as many ways as possible, get the word out to parents that these are the goals, and this is how you can help your children to achieve these goals. We're meeting with Parent Congress, our parent leaders. We want them to know so that they can reach out to all of their constituents also and know. And working with our community partners, they have to know if there are opportunities to reinforce, whether it's comprehension, if it's reading aloud, whatever it is, and they may feel, it's just a small way to do it, but, each step that everyone takes helps us to get closer to the goals. We have grade level expectations. It's a one-pager. It's very quick and easy to read. It's online. I'm going to suggest that we have them in schools. We've got a lot of parent-teacher conferences coming up, and it's a good time for parents to be able to receive in the school, because some parents will go online and look for it and some won't. But how easy would it be if they're in the building and they're at a parent-teacher conference to receive something like that? Saturday programming has begun, and we want to encourage our partners. If it's a petting zoo, that's fine, that's good, and the children enjoy it. But how about we take some index cards and we label some things around that petting zoo that children can read and learn about. So our extended learning time program has begun recently, and that's a time where we're also reinforcing these goals. So there's a lot that's happening in a deliberate and intentional and strategic and a focused way. So I wanted to just reassure the board that we're all working together for these three goals to make sure that we're leaving no stones unturned. Next slide. This is the final slide. I thought I needed to end by sharing where we are going in our next steps with this 999 model. I envision that at our board meetings, we'll be sharing some very detailed information on DIBELS, on iReady, and on our graduation work. We're counting right now credits. We have counselors in schools. Our ASLs are working with principals. They're looking at credits. They're doing detailed credit reviews to see just how many of those students have those Regents exam passed and how many of them have the 16.5 credits, and how we're targeting those that don't to come to ELT programs so that they can have every opportunity to get them. I'll continue meeting monthly with First Vice President Dr. Evans Brown so that we can go over it and come to some decisions before publishing or coming to some of the meetings like this, the committee meetings, to present. And so that the data is very easy to understand. Something I always used as a principal was a Gantt chart, and it's a colorful visual. It's easy to understand. It'll list for you, kind of all of the initiatives that we have and where we are with those initiatives, red, green, or yellow. And if it's red, there's no shame in it being red. That just tells us a story that we got more work to do in that area. So I'll be sharing that information. I'll continue with the data meetings with my cabinet so that we can continue to do a deep review and some action plans if we start to see things sliding backwards. We want to ensure that our extended learning time program is targeted for our most needy students. We've got to make sure that those students that are regressing or are not progressing have the opportunity to participate in extended learning time. And that was really the impetus for us creating a 3-bell schedule so that it would provide equity and all students would have the opportunity to participate, especially those that needed it the most. And the big thing is that I have to keep the team and the schools focused on the main thing. The main thing has to stay the main thing. I can't, pull them off of the main things to, run in other areas, because the reality is at the end of the year, I'm holding them accountable and you all are holding me accountable. So if the main thing is, and the board has approved it, that these 3 things are the main things, then we got to keep those things the main things. And finally, we'll continuously work with OSA so that we are using our data dashboard, refreshing data every day, and making sure that we all know and understand how to use it and how to stay up to date with it and to keep using those data points to inform what we're doing. So that's kind of where we are. And I and my team that's on will take questions now.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. I'm certainly encouraged, and I'm sure the board is as well. If you have any questions before I bring on Leslie Smith Grant. Hi, Leslie. She's our certified coach from the Council of Great City Schools. Please raise your hand. Any questions on this encouraged, data-driven presentation by Dr. Williams? President Belton Kopman. Hello.
Thank you, Chair Evans Brown and Dr. Williams for your presentation. So I'm trying to figure out when is the beginning of the year was it data was taken in September. When is the middle of the year?
It will be before February 28th. So there's a window. I don't want but it'll be before February 28th.
Okay, and so if I understood previous presentations from our Chief Academic Officer, she talked about that there were things that they do inside the classroom in between the testing.
Progress monitoring.
Progress monitoring. So that's still going on, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so with our extended learning program, I've always thought it should have been reserved for the most neediest students. How is that working out? Are we going to get a report eventually to share what's going on with the ELT program as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
It just started, but absolutely we will.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm encouraged. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, President Kopman. And I should note that I want to give President Kopman, kudos, because she was one of the persons that introduced this whole concept of Council of Great City Schools. She had already went through the training and brought it to this board. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, but it can't happen without the right mindset. And we had to get the right leader in order to move our district to the next level and put other people like you and et cetera in place to make it happen. Your vice presidentship of executive affairs and your leadership is showing. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, mindset is important. Thank you. So I have a hand in City Hall. Is that board member Hurd?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman Evans Brown. Thank you for the great presentation you have today, and Dr. Williams, thank you for going over in detail about what DIBELS mean and the 3 goals, and plus the additive goals that goes along with that, which I don't think everybody truly understand, because we're not just concentrating on 3rd grade, but we're looking at everything as a focus. I was looking at and take some questions from community members about DIBELS, the concerns of it. I know that the district sent a letter out to all the parents about DIBELS. The question was on there was, what can parents do? And we see a lot of calls from parents who didn't understand the coursework and classwork, and we know that at home is where a lot of kids, have to focus on studying, doing homework, and understanding that what they learned in school to take it home to be able to do the coursework. And I know that we have programs set aside, that they can go to help them complete their task also, and after school help. What can we do for the parents even more to try to help them understand the work? Because we know this educational system from here and some that they came from may have failed them, or they may have not learned as much as they should have, to help a family. So what can we do with those individuals, those parents that's been reaching out? And last question to that was, a parent asked about online coursework that they can do themselves. And I know they're doing the coursework that the kids are doing through the apps, but they want to know if it's something that they can do to understand and learn.
So what can parents do? When I send home the newsletters, it's usually just 1 or 2 real basic things. So, having your child read something and then just tell you in their words what they read. When you go to the supermarket, introducing fruits or vegetables that they may never have heard of, a rutabaga. You never know when they get into some of these New York State assessments. There could be a question about a rutabaga. There could be a question about a frankfurter. Is that a hot dog? What is a frankfurter? But if you don't call them frankfurters, then you get into the test, you see that word, and you just automatically shut down. So comprehension right now was the focus for the first newsletter that I sent. The second, this one will talk more about them pronouncing and talking more about reading, asking your child, what did you do today in reading, instead of just saying, how was school? Because most kids are just going to say, I got a grandson and he says it all the time, fine. So, if you don't ask those what questions, if you just ask them how was school and you give them a chance to say, fine, that's what they'll say. But tell me one thing that you learned today in reading, and have them voice it and articulate. And if they say, I don't know, nothing, well, you had to learn one thing, just one thing. Just keep pressing them with that one thing. We have these documents that the CAI department created, which talks to parents about, and it's very friendly. There are pictures, talks to them about, as a 3rd grader, what should your child be able to do? As a kindergartner, what are some things that they should be able to do? So those are the things that I'm thinking, sometimes if you just trust sending stuff home in a backpack, sometimes it makes it, sometimes it doesn't make it past the locker or the bus. But if we can get parents to come in for parent-teacher conferences where they can just get it, they can hand it out. If it's on the front counter at our schools, where when parents come in to pick their children up, it's just right there. If it's in the nurse's office where they can come, if they've had to pick up their children, it's going to take off fronts. But beyond that, I think, we've got these beautiful parent centers that Dr. Reynolds oversees, and we have some very strong parent groups, DPCC, we've got MVP, and some of these groups are bringing in lots and lots of parents at these meetings. So we want to do some face-to-face trainings also. And, beyond that, those Wednesday with Williams, where if you are a parent that struggles to read, we don't want you to feel bad about, not being able to necessarily sit down and read to your child. So it's a time for me to be able to come on a video and in 2 minutes or less, be able to share with them some questions they can ask and some things that they can do.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. This last thing is that I know it's embarrassing for a parent also who has trouble reading or can't read, or don't know how to do math, or even read or write, or a grandparent that may be in that situation, to work with a child. So they really feel they disconnected from that child. And I just think that, reaching out to these ones who seem to be forgotten to try to help them. I think that's one of the biggest keys to the city to help educate everyone.
I agree. I agree.
Thank you.
You know, I don't want any parent to feel discouraged or embarrassed, because the reality is, you know, I've been in this 34 years and every parent wants better for their children. And I don't want them to feel embarrassed or bad because they may not necessarily know how to navigate and get them to better. I mean, my parents wanted me to go to college. They hadn't gone. They didn't know how to get me there, but they knew that that was one of their goals. So it took people in schools to help me to navigate and get there. And that's what we have to do to help our children to read and do math. Mathematics is challenging nowadays. And so it's taught a whole different way. So we don't want them to feel bad. We want to help them to learn. And sometimes our children can help them to learn how to do it. And so we want to put the fun back in learning for them.
Okay, so I don't see any other hands here. I see Jen and Paulette. You guys have any questions for Dr. Williams before I introduce Leslie and bring her on? Okay, so Leslie Smith Grant is with us. She's a certified coach with the Council of Great City Schools. She has been instrumental in getting us to this point where we are. And it's interesting because we don't realize how much time has gone by. And here we are talking about goals and guardrails, and you know, the board has adopted their guardrails, and now we're at a point that, at a juncture that we're talking about reviewing the consequences of the guardrails that we put together. So, as you know, board member Cindy McCutcheon is not here, and she's the chair of our implementation team that President Kottman put together, along with myself and board member Shuda. We'll be meeting Friday, I believe. So in her stead, Leslie is here. And so Leslie, you do have the floor.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good to see your tiny faces on these little squares. I hope that next year we'll be able to see all of you in person, actually pretty soon. So thank you, Superintendent Williams, for putting together the report on the interims. And we will be working, again, I appreciate y'all indulging in our little speed course on how to do the whole student outcomes focused governance. We did put some goals, extracted some from the work y'all had done to give the superintendent SMART goals for this year. The interim goals are the things that you all will be progress monitoring throughout the year. And again, this is all sort of a practice for when we get that set next year. But what I would like to do and encourage each of you to do is go back and look at the goals that you set for the superintendent, look at the interims that she has presented, and if you have any questions about those, be ready to, just if there's anything that you are missing, or if you're seeing, can see the arc of progress there, just think about that. Let us know. I would be happy to have a little session on progress monitoring reports with any of you if you want to do that. And also hope to get a little more graphically aligned progress monitoring report that shows the relationship between those interims and where they are in terms of the overall goal. So hopefully by the your board meeting, we can do that. I'll work with Superintendent Williams to get that done, so that you have a really clear, concise understanding about how those interims are where they are in the year, what the progress is from the beginning to the end, and how they relate to the overall goals. Now, I know that we had DIBELS for the literacy goal. DIBELS is what we're measuring. That was the biggest, strongest indicator of progress towards that goal for this year. When we go into the big 5-year planning next year, to get your 5-year goal set, we will ask for more than just one sort of interim. So we'll ask for 3 different measures that y'all can track throughout the 5-year period. But for right now, we're tracking the dibbles on that. And for the math goal, hang on a second. We're tracking.
I ready?
I ready, yep. And then for the, you would just put up the piece about the, sorry about the graduation. So other than that, I know that there's a question about ELT report. So is that something that you want to have as a interim? I don't know that we had discussed having that as one of the interims. If that's something you're tracking that y'all need to track on your side of the house, yes. I don't know that it's something that the board needs to track as well.
It's something that, you know, it indicates it's an extended learning time program. So it's an after school program. And we want to make sure that we're reinforcing an after school, you know, what's happening during the school day. And if the school day is focused on these 3 goals, then, you know, we would hope that after school participation, you know, there's some time for cultural and enrichment activities, but, you know, the academic activities should be moving forward the academic goals that we have set. So we'll be looking at a first snap at, you know, are they full? You know, who's attending? Are we targeting to make sure that the students that need it the most, you know, those students that are coming in at a real deficit have the opportunity to show some growth. Maybe they won't be at 39%, you know, if you're showing a lot of deficits, but at least you will be progressing towards that. So we want to look first at the attendance and who's targeted and how folks are targeted, and if we need to beef up some of that.
Okay, but those are things that you're following on the administrative side of the house to understand all of the factors that go into, are these children going to be successful for the goals the board has set?
Yes.
Right. Okay. But so I just want to make sure that the 3rd grade economically disadvantaged students are the ones that the board is tracking you. That will be on your evaluation. So I just want to make sure that, you know, when the information is extended way beyond that, just making sure that it's relevant, right? That it ties back into that. So if there's a program that you know, the board requested a report out on a progress of a program, trying to figure out how that aligns with the, you know, a student outcome would be a best practice, right? Rather than than understanding all the nuts and bolts of what went into the program. So
Sharon Belton Cotman, you had a question.
Yeah, I have a question because I'm not clear. It's not clear in my mind. What happens? Okay, we've done the beginning of the year. We already have children that we're targeting or we're working on. How does the parents get involved? Are they notified that your child at that point that, you know, we need you to be involved in it, or what? How is that going on? Because I don't, you know, oftentimes parents call us up and saying they were surprised about stuff. So, you know, if they don't come to the parent teachers meeting, what is in place for that? For those, do you send home a statement or something with every child? Does a letter go out? I'm just curious to know how, because oftentimes parents call us up and say they didn't know. Okay, and I just wanted to know, is there anything in place about that?
So each school does, but this year, in addition to that, I did a letter to all of our 3rd grade parents. I did a robocall to them, but the school sends home something to all, you know, K through 6 or K through 8 to say they want them to participate. But because we're focused for the purposes of this work on 3rd graders, I sent home something to 3rd grade parents, and I'll continue to. I don't want it to be a one and done. Every month I'll send home, and it's a nice, colorful, it's really only about 3 or 4 sentences, it's pictures, but it's something to let them know that we're involved in this work. We want their children to be a part of the extended learning time program. It's only going to help them, and these are a couple of tips that they can use to work with their children. But principals send home their own letter to say, your child scored at this at Dibbles, we want them to be a part of after school. But again, I did something for 3rd graders. I did it for third graders.
Okay, so is the letter is it across the board? The same
Yes.
letter is being sent out to every
For
principal?
all third graders, yes. that came-
Okay, so what is our target? I guess where I'm looking at is, because next year, the second graders will be third graders. And so are you targeting any other groups of children to get to that, make sure that goal continues? Because this is a 2-year process for us.
Yeah, so what we did last year, we started working with our second graders who were rising to be third graders when we knew that the board was moving in this way so that they would be a part of the summer program. So I'm sure that that's something that second semester we'll start focusing more on second graders. We right now are looking at their data, so that'll be a part of the DIBELS report, because that's going to help to inform the board on what my goals should be next year if we're continuing our work with third graders, or if we're going to move up to fourth grade or whatever it is, or we're going to say second and third graders. So second semester, we'll start doing more focus on that group.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Leslie, I'm sorry. You can continue.
Yeah, I just didn't, I'm not sure if, I just want to be clear. The intent would be that this report, which would be an interim, will be clear about the interim goals for each of the overall goals. That'll be a report, and then you will do the DIBELS. You had it on the agenda for the last board meeting. It got moved, so that will be on the next board meeting agenda, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. And I, again, would love to work with you a little bit on, yep.
Chair Evans Brown, I believe in talking to Dr. Crestis that we are going to review the DIBELS and iReady scoring the beginning of the year in my work session next week for student achievement.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct, Dr. Williams? I wasn't sure.
That can happen. That can happen.
Kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Is the full board on this meeting? Does the full board come to all your committee meetings?
For the
Yes.
most part, yes.
So you're looking at the information twice, though.
So if we do it at the committee meeting, we won't have to do it at the board meeting. It wouldn't make sense to do the same.
I would recommend it being highlighted at your board meeting, that you're paying attention to the student outcomes, that you're monitoring progress for students. That would be my recommendation, is that should become the focus of your board meeting.
I'm sorry, Leslie, would that become a workshop? Normally that would be a workshop.
No, it'd be a progress monitoring. So you're monitoring the progress
Report.
of the outcome goal. Or, yeah.
I think, Leslie, honestly, this goes into when probably the first retreat we did with both you and AJ about our committee structure and how our committees operate. So I hear you. I think if our focus is going to be on student outcomes, and this is the progress that we're really having a close look at, it's something that certainly should be part of our regular business meetings. So, but I don't know if we're at a point where we can change that structure now, and if it's something that we're working towards in the near future.
That is a y'all question. I'm happy to work with you in whatever formatting, agenda planning, or anything you want to do to get there. That is a y'all question.
It's kind of like, we're changing the game, so to speak. So it kind of makes sense, Larry, what you're saying for student achievement. But it also makes sense that at a full business meeting, a board meeting, that we have more of a precise and full audience, so to speak, so that sometimes people don't necessarily come to our committee meetings and listen, but they're more apt to attend a business meeting on the third Wednesday. Terry Shuda, board member Terry Shuda, you had your hand up.
Yes, and I'm listening to the discussion, and I would say I would be in support of transferring a lot of this committee work of the student achievement into the main business meeting, because I thought that's where we wanted to go, that our meetings were going to be 50% student achievement data driven. Right, Leslie? Is that what our goal is? And so
that was one of the guardrails you set for yourself, was to
right,
try
one of
and
the
drive.
guardrails. And so I think that's a good way to start. And Larry, I think where I'm struggling, and I don't know if you're struggling and any of the other chair people, then it kind of like, where are we going then with these committees? And
Yes.
are the committees as useful as perhaps we thought they could be if we're in, that's just my thought. And I'm looking, for feedback from the rest of the board members. But I think that this is really putting those discussions in the right place.
I'm right there with you, Terry, and I would just add that, do we know, are we including our work sessions to determine whether we're spending 50% of our time on student outcomes? Or is it just our regular business meeting that we're applying that expectation to?
Our recommendation is that anytime the board calls a meeting or requires the presence of the board and staff, that is time you track.
Okay.
Excuse me, can I jump in? I'm just not clear. The superintendent made a statement earlier about DIBELS and when it's going to be ready, the data from the DIBELS and also for my ready. So would that be ready by the 3rd week, or are we looking to extend that out more?
It's already ready.
Yeah, the beginning of year data is ready, but the middle of year, it'll be
Middle of
ready.
the year.
Yes, that'll be ready by February 28th. That's when we do our
February 28th.
middle of the year testing.
Okay.
Yeah, and what we would like you to do is, as soon as possible when the data is, verified but fresh, that the board is receiving it, to understand what what is the progress of students. So looking at beginning of the year data in December is, not ideal. So you want to make sure again that the board is able to see and understand where those interim progress monitors for the student performance are. The students take assessments, and having the board again understand where the population of students is at the beginning of the year, as close to the beginning of the year as possible, where they are middle of the year. And then we have a matrices of questions to ask around the strategies that are being used, and would like to have a session with the board to talk about that as well, so that the information that's being gleaned from that data that's shared is useful to the community, to the board, and to the staff. So
Yeah, we were ready for October, but it's just that,
yeah,
we had a lot of
we're baby stepping, guys. This is
Yeah.
good. We're baby stepping in the right direction.
We are moving.
One more question. With the data coming out at the end of February, so February 28th, that'll leave us 3 months just in case we need to make any changes to help children during that time period before our finals exams in June, or when school closes. Is that enough time, those 3 months, to
well, we're doing
to
work
help
all
students
year.
who's underachieving?
So we're doing progress monitoring all throughout the year. It's just that middle of the year, that's where we do another big assessment. But the children are constantly taking little assessments, and teachers are refining their work to target where the students' needs are. So we're doing work all year, progress monitoring in between beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year. I don't want it to seem like we're just doing 3 assessments, beginning, middle, and end. We're
Right.
doing work, progress monitoring all throughout the year.
So it's
Okay. And our
ongoing.
students with IEPs, and the students that's transferring back from charter programs. I had some conversation with parents earlier this week about their students returning back to the Buffalo schools because they felt that they wouldn't get enough work for the IEPs for their children, so they're coming back to the district. So with those children, are we able to properly assess those children who may be coming back maybe January or February?
They would take the middle of the year assessment, And
Okay.
if they left us, let's just say if this was their first year in a charter, we'd be able to look at where they ended the year and see kind of where they are. But we, you know, whenever they come back to us, wherever they fall, if it's in February, they take the middle of the year assessment. And for that
Okay,
group,
thank
that
you.
would be their baseline. Mhm.
I see two hands, Board Member Paulette Woods, followed by Board Member Shuta.
Leslie, I have a quick question. I hear you saying that it's important for us to, at the board meetings, let our constituents know that we're monitoring student achievement. And Larry's saying he wants to move his items to the board meeting. Then I had a constituent say to me again, why don't we have 2 board meetings a month? And then instead of having 2 committee meetings, if the committee meeting structure is going to be diminishing, we can have 1 meeting and put all 4 committees on that one date. And then it sounds like we'll be moving more in the direction that you're pushing, talking about achievement, letting the public see it. Is that what I'm hearing?
I would say for best practice and what we've, you know, in the research, the more time you as a board can spend together monitoring progress of students, the better for student outcomes. The more time you allow the superintendent to do the work you have charged the superintendent with, which are the goals in protecting the guardrails, the better outcomes are for students. There are a lot of different steps in this work if you want to keep going in the student outcomes focus, to keep your focus on student outcomes in this process. One of those practices, you know, cleaning habits that we like to take you through is to do a full assessment of what are your practices now. So you have committees examining what the committees are, what they serve, how is this time you spend, you know, useful to increasing student outcomes. What are the policies you have? And you know that the implementation committee has taken a sort of tried to gather all of that together so that you all can do it. So the committees, the policies, like what are you doing? How are you as a board operating together as a unit to help students improve their outcomes in your district? I do not want to say and would never suggest that in a meeting like this that you immediately switch, you know, all of your practices around how your committees are structured or something. It's a process. We need to look at it. Everybody needs to be, you know, sort of engaged and thoughtful about what the purpose is, what you want to do with it. Does it benefit you, right? So just know that's coming, Paulette. Yeah, I'd love to say overnight, y'all. Just do everything perfectly overnight. It's not going to happen. We are going to keep working to get there. But I just want everybody needs to be engaged. Everybody needs to be brought up to speed. If we try to do this too quickly, it's not going to work for everybody. So I just want to, let's go slow, get there together. But I also do want to encourage if, you know, if the Student Achievement Committee, Board Member Scott, if that is something that could just be presented once, that saves the staff and district time. If all of y'all, it saves y'all time. If we can present that at your main board meeting where the focus should be on students and what they know or are able to do, that would be great.
Okay, thank you for that. Terry Shuta?
I'm all set, thanks.
Okay. All right, so looks like.
Excuse me, can I ask Leslie a question?
Leslie? Sure.
Okay, so Leslie, I'm sorry, I don't have your timeline in front of me, but when do we start monitoring the time spent that the board is spending? Like at our board meetings, when do we start that exercise? Is it anytime soon?
We can do that tomorrow. I would recommend that you figure out who your favorite timekeeper is, which one of you enjoys that practice. I'm happy to work with any of you to do that and to show you sort of how we work through that. I have shared a couple of meetings from other districts, just sort of best practice things. So if any of you really enjoyed watching those. You might enjoy doing the timekeeping piece. If there is a staff that you want to include to help us with that, to sort of be the holder of those time use pieces, let me know. But we can start that at any time. It's useful. It's, you know, it's a good habit to get into. But as it relates to your to the timeline and to your official work, I need to go back and check that, and I apologize for not knowing that. But I do want to understand we have a board self-evaluation coming up, and I will email all of you after that. So what we'd like to do is the month before have a time use evaluation, so you all are clear on what you spent your time on that last quarter, and then we do the self-evaluation for that quarter. And then you see, okay, these are the practices or habits that we changed that, you know, helped improve and get us further along the line of where we're going to be.
So can we, okay, so you want one person, but I really think that it's important that the entire board understands this, because a lot of time is spent on things that are not currently on the board that are really inputs, not outputs.
Yeah.
And as a result, you know, the meetings are extremely long in a lot of cases. Okay. And so I'll talk with the implementation team about it, but I just think that that's one exercise that every board member should really do. It was part of the training that we received. You know, I just think that if and particularly the board members, you know, that tend to be a little long-winded, that if they realize that, you know, this amount of time is being used, you're taking it from your staff, you're taking it from, you know, your other board members, when this is not the time for that. So I encourage us to do some sort of a group activity or share that, because I think that it's important, because I think that practice is also happening where board members are engaged in other things throughout the community, that there's a tendency not to stay focused on the issue or the goal. So we can talk more about that. But I do know, I think that if we can get that going, I think we'll be able to shorten our board meetings, and that'll give staff back some time, and that'll also allow the superintendent, you know, to be able to concentrate more and not spend, you know, 4 or 5 hours a week just sitting with the board.
A couple of ways that we could do that. And again, I would like, you know, if one person per quarter wanted to volunteer to be the timekeeper for that quarter, we could do that. That doesn't get everybody engaged. If you would like to have a small little workshop on how to do those time use pieces with everybody via Zoom, we could do that. And I would give you, you know, each of you watch a meeting or two, and you have to, you know, code it for me. That would be very helpful. That would, for all of you, I think, with the mind to your own behavior and your own time. And this is the thing where we don't want to get into is I love to watch meetings of the board I used to be on and point out when everybody else was doing everything. So just being mindful of, you know, like everybody watch it with regards to themselves, right? Keep the chunks of time on what you think it was spent on, but be really mindful of your own behaviors. And that would be my advice. And if we want to do that, if you want to try and get a little, y'all tell me when we could try and get that together to have a little workshop to really just go over that and dig into it.
Yeah, let's let Cindy, because she is the chair, let's make sure she's involved in that process, and then we can follow her lead.
Yeah, if y'all all just do we want to do this yay or nay straw poll or something at some point, well, let me know. Okay.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea, because, you know, we're shifting now, and sometimes, you know, change may not necessarily be good for everyone, but, you know, we want to do this work. We agreed to do this work, and, you know, maybe a little uncomfortable, but it's for the betterment of our students in this district.
Yeah, again, it's a really good practice. We are, you know, we'll say it till you're sick of hearing it. Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. Which adult has to change first? And it's not the person across the table from you, just a note. So examining your own, you know, own behavior is a really, really good practice. So getting eyeballs on that. Speaking of getting through and freeing up your evening, do you want me to go into the next item? I know that Cindy was not able to attend tonight. She was on a flight, but we wanted to discuss you had adopted some board guardrails and to look at the practices that are pretty common around what those consequences would be. And Larry, I don't know if that's for me or, sorry, Board Member Scott.
Yeah, sorry to interject. Before we move to that next topic, I just want to close up this one because we need the superintendent and staff are going to need to know what we're doing in regards to student achievement and whether we're going to have a student achievement work session or if we're just going to move that presentation to our regular business meeting in 2 weeks.
I would appreciate the opportunity to work with you to align that a little more, Dr. Williams, if that's okay. And then that would giving them that extra week, Board Member Scott, I think would be very helpful. So this is presented at the big meeting.
So then no student achievement work session next week.
So
can everyone live with that?
We can live with it.
Dr. Williams, do you have any?
Oh, I can live with it.
Okay. Any objections?
No, we still have an educational support piece that Terry Shuda chairs. Correct?
And I'm sure she can use the time.
Yeah, yeah.
My concern is that the board meetings do not become excessively longer because of that. Okay, so I want to be, real clear. We're getting our staff out at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. Many of them, their days start at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I want to be, cognizant of how that's going to work out to make sure that we're not putting another half hour or whatever onto our board meetings and put us out to 9:30, 10 o'clock. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a consideration.
I would say look at what you have on the table, and if you got to move some stuff off the table to accommodate a report on students, that's a good thing. So
that's right. Looks like Terry has a question.
I would think, though, we're probably going to do the same type of analysis of our full board meeting on how much time, like when we do our analysis, we're going to see that maybe some of the things we do at the full board meeting. I think, Leslie, we've had this discussion in the implementation meetings that there's some things that we need to restructure as a whole to make them more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Agree.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I just want to be the timekeeper. We do have another session. I know, Leslie, you wanted to go over some of the board guardrails as it pertains to the adoption of consequences. I think we may have to table that at this time because there is another committee meeting, and I don't.
Can I push on that a tiny bit? I think this is very important. You don't have to have this discussion tonight, but it is very important that each of you do review. This was a draft of sort of a one that has been used in many districts around the country. And what it is, again, is there's no point in having any kind of, just lip service to, we're going to put guardrails on ourselves as board members, unless there are some consequences that get followed through with, judiciously. And so the draft that was sent to you all, does everybody have that?
Mm-hmm.
I have to bring it up.
And I just think it would be very, very helpful for each of you to read through that and, discuss with, get a partner, discuss it, see if there are, things that you would like to discuss with me? Are there things that are impractical for you in Buffalo? I know y'all get cold up there, and I don't know if you can. But anyway, just look at it, see if there are things that are, you're okay with this, and I would recommend trying to adopt this at your next board meeting. So that would be my my question to you, is if there's a big something here that needs to be pushed.
So everyone received a copy of the document, correct? All right. So I know it's extensive, and I gleaned it over myself. Probably need to read it again. I'm wondering if this is something that could also be included in Larry's time next week, since he's not having a student achievement committee meeting, if this is something that we can carve out next week prior to the board meeting. That's just.
So are you saying that you would like to use some of that time not used by Larry for your executive committee to review this? Okay. So that's doable.
I would think that does free up staff. This is a board, other than some board support staff maybe, but you don't need the assessment team and whatnot for this. So.
Right.
I'd agree.
You agree? Who else agree, or who don't agree?
I believe how AJ and how it was referred during our training that some of our committees that we have, they believe wasn't focused towards student achievement, and student achievement should be focused at the board meeting. And I think this is a great step, how to move forward with student achievement at the board meeting, so that the population could know exactly what our goals are, what our guardrails are, what our plans are for the future, and are we achieving or declining in certain areas. So I really think that should be at the board meeting, how it was described to us, and that we can move in that direction. It's a new pathway for us, and might be some fears in it, but I think that we can, at least as a group, move in that direction.
Okay.
I would ask that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
No, just one final thing on this, on the consequences. I would ask each of you, please read through this. If you have questions, concerns, objections, whatever around this, if you would highlight those, email me and let me know. And I could maybe keep a running tally of that, so we could have more productive conversation when you're ready for this. There may be some things that I could handle, offline, or a couple of you could manage together, but being able to get through this without everyone, needing to bring it up for the very first time with each other would be helpful and productive, I think.
Sounds good. So are we in agreement that next week?
What I think we should do is take a look at them and decide next week if we're going to move them forward or what we want to do with them. Once you have that conversation, the board can have an active conversation about it, because it still has to go before legal as well. Okay, and so anything, if we're talking about adopting anything, policy, or moving something to the next table, we have to talk to legal and see if we can move it in one meeting. If it's a change in policy, it has to be done in 2 meetings. So we need to definitely have that conversation next week and decide what we're going to do. I think that's what we need to leave it at.
Yeah, you could definitely manage this in 2 meetings. I wouldn't roll it through. You're not going to kick anybody off the board by Christmas, so you good.
I thought we passed the guardrails. Am I mistaken?
We passed the guardrails, but we didn't pass the consequences.
Yeah, so this is what the follow through is if the guardrails are violated. So that you're holding each other accountable to your what you said you wanted to how you said you wanted to
Hold
guardrail your
ourselves.
behaviors. Yeah, interact with each other, your commitment to each other.
So can you resend that out, please?
It was, I just found it again.
What day was it?
Yep, it's Cindy had sent it from the conference.
Oh, it was
October
sent from
28th.
Cindy. I'm sorry.
Cindy sent
Yep.
it.
Cindy sent it.
October
Cindy.
28th.
October 27th.
Okay, yeah, that's a different, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I was looking for you. I thought you had sent it. I'm like, oh boy, I don't see it.
Oh, it is the 27th. Okay, anyway.
I think it was a Sunday, Saturday. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I can find it now. I thought it was something that Leslie had sent and I overlooked. That's all I was looking for.
Draft guardrails and consequences. Draft board guardrails and consequences. And I know I'm running your patience and time here. We had mentioned a book club idea, and I just wanted to throw out, if y'all are interested in pursuing that, I think it would be greatly beneficial to the community. And my thought was that you could do a virtual one. Each of you propose people, and then we get AJ to host it sometime in December. That gives people a few weeks to get the book, read the book. We could keep it rolling and have them later as well. But this way, there's no, like, you know, we don't have to go in person and organize all that. That's a lot to do.
Oh, true.
Just a thought, if y'all want to, if you still wanted to do the book club idea, I think it would be very smart to get your community engaged in the headspace that y'all are moving to. So.
Okay, so we have a lot to think about. Terry Shooter, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just think December might be a tough month to get people with the holidays and all that, because I want to make sure that, you know, from my standpoint, and I'm sure it's from everyone else's, we want to make sure that we get a true engagement, and I'm not sure, maybe December wouldn't be the best month, maybe January.
You could promote the book and promote the idea through November, December, and then we could try and have the actual book club.
That sounds great.
Yeah. That's great. Start promoting it.
Okay. Well, we can talk more in the implementation meeting. Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time and patience tonight. And you all know where to find me if you need me. All right.
Leslie, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Leslie.
Right.
We'll see you Friday at the implementation meeting. This concludes Executive Affairs session, and I'm going to now pass the baton to Chairwoman Paulette Woods for her Finance Committee meeting. Paulette Woods?
Yes. Welcome to the Finance and Operations Committee meeting. Other than hiring the superintendent, one of the most important legal responsibilities of this Board of Education is to pass a budget. Your budget is your statement of priorities. You put your money where your mouth is. So today we have a very important presentation on the financial status of Buffalo Public Schools for the 2023-24 year, this year, and a review of the ARC ESSER funding, and a 2024-25 budget preview, because we have some important decisions that are going to have to be made, and we need to be, our CFO and our superintendent want to make us aware of it, because it's going to be a process, and it's going to be some very important decisions for this board. So, Madam Superintendent, I give it over to you to introduce your staff and to make whatever comments you would like.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairwoman Woods. You really gave a great opening. That's exactly what tonight's presentation is all about. There are some very important decisions that are going to have to be made over the next couple of months. And, you know, I think as much as we can be ahead of it and proactively plan for it, and being transparent and communicating, you know, what we need to do, I think the better off we'll be. I do just want to share as an aside that today, our CFO and myself had a very positive meeting with our city controller, Mrs. Barbara Miller-Williams. She had convened a small team that was there, her special assistant, Mr. Damone Smith, and I believe the CFO, I'm not quite sure of his title for the city, Mr. Szymanski. And it was a good conversation talking about Buffalo State College and Da Vinci and that whole lease agreement piece. It looks good. There were no promises, but she and her staff will be engaging in some deep review and research. She understands the timeliness for, us knowing where we're going and what we need to do. And so she has assured me that she'll be back in touch with me not later than Friday to let me know. So I really do want to share that and my appreciation to her for agreeing to meet with us on a dime. It was a quick request and she accommodated, and it was a very positive and good meeting. So I'll turn things over to CFO Barnes. He was very helpful in that meeting, and I know that he's got, a lot that he needs to share tonight. Some good, some challenging, but it's all information that this board has to know to help with, guiding some of the decisions that will be coming down the line. So CFO Barnes, I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you, Superintendent, and thank you, Mrs. Woods. You guys framed the presentation perfectly. And Mrs. Woods, I gotta say, I always look forward to our pre-presentation, very spirited discussions. It helps clear my mind for these meetings. So tonight, I'm just gonna talk about, we're at the end of the first quarter, so where we're standing for the current year results. And then, a preview of our planning and budget for next year regarding the the end of our BoE. So, next slide, Edmure, please. Like at the end of every first quarter, it's too early in the year to calculate a reliable projection. We only have 1 month of the full BTF salaries. They only come back to work in September, and the state has not yet released our current year revenues. So largely based on that, at this point, there's no identifiable savings. So the original deficit projection of $37.7 million, that's what we should count on. But among the factors that are maybe a little bit different or pronounced this year, I want to go over some of those. The full impact of the second year of the BTF contract on salaries, extra activity, and benefits. If you remember, a large portion of that first year was funded by ARP-ESSER. That's not the case this year. We're going to have fewer vacancies, thus higher wages and benefits than in the past years. We may have to make some transfers to capital projects that were not originally budgeted for. Examples of that include $1.5 million for Fosdick Field, a $1.4 million down payment on the commissary project, and possibly an unknown amount for the renovation of leased space at Jewett. We very recently had some unbudgeted transportation costs for late bus supervision and for ELT buses. There's a pending and still being discussed $6 million WASED purchase that was not in the original budget. And then maybe 2 weeks ago, we got notified by the state that they're going to charge us retro tuition increases for the kids that attend agencies. That could be up to $1.5 million. There are miscellaneous other unbudgeted requests for approximately $3 million. If they're approved. The super's been holding the line on those, but that's out there. And again, it's too early to change that initial projection because we haven't gotten our first SAMS output report, which is how the state tells us the exact amount of revenues we're going to get this year. These factors will be more fully discussed and outlined in the official first quarter report, which will be submitted to the board for the next full board meeting. But again, right now, largely because of all those things I just told you, a much more active year than we've seen in a while. we should plan on a $37.7 million deficit this year. This is the last year of the Art Besser budget. Some recent additions, additional security measures, Evolve scanners, Say Yes Little Scholar programs, and some playgrounds. At this time, actually just yesterday at 4 o'clock, we submitted the ESSER 2 to the state, the final report, so that part is gone. We are in our last year right now, and why I say that is now that it's final and submitted to the state, we can work on the final tweaks to this last year of the Art Besser budget. But there's really so many requests for Art Besser, any additional requests to be considered are going to have to be offset by cuts. And next slide. Okay, before we start talking about the end of Art Besser process, I want to reiterate again that we are in the strongest financial position this district has ever been in. We're in a stronger financial position than just about any other district that's facing the same Art Besser challenges. That should make us feel very good and confident going into the planning process for these decisions that we have to make. On this page, I have the fund balance analysis. If you go down to the last number, the 375 million, that's our total just general fund balance. However, about 200 and some million of that has already been assigned for specific purposes. I'm going to walk through some of those. If you go to the top, the non-spendable and restricted items, so you got 375 million in cash, but 30,844 has to be set aside for specific purposes, including the last payment on a debt that we incurred, unemployment insurance, and any potential judgments and claims. You have to set aside that money. Then the assigned section, this is where decisions made by the district impact how you can use your fund balance. The first line is designated for next year's budget, 37.7. That's the projected deficit right now. We need the money at the end of the year to fund that overspending, let's go. The next line is $6 million. Last year, there were POs cut that weren't fully paid out. You need to set aside $6 million to pay that. This next line, I'm going to mention a couple times in my presentation. Assigned for capital projects, $24 million. That is money that is deducted from our fund balance and put aside for decisions that we've made for the commissary, for Buff State, for Fosdick Field, additional monies for All High Stadium, and then there's a tiny bit of a contingency in there. So anytime we fund unaidable projects or our portion of an aidable project, you have to set those funds aside, and it's a deduction from your fund balance. The last item, or the next item, $70 million. That's for the payment of post-employment benefits. Then there's $15 million. You set aside that. That's like a month and a half for health insurance, just in case something bad happens. This next line, $30 million. Here is why our financial strength will make our ability to handle these upcoming decisions easier than most districts. After conversations with the superintendent and prior to our audit being finalized, we assigned $30 million for the continuation of some of the ARP plan items, $15 million over a 2-year period, okay? We don't want to use that money, but it has been set aside in case we don't achieve our objective of cutting 90 million. And last item, 9 million, you set aside money for any unknown prior year claims that crawl out of the woodwork. So when you're done with all that, we really have $151 million in unassigned operating cash. Still exceedingly healthy, but you can see we start at 375, and based upon the decisions we make, like unable capital projects, those funds get assigned and essentially gobbled up. Edmure, next slide, please. I guess I want to end on, again, this fund balance and that analysis. The assignments were very conservatively done. That is a supremely healthy fund balance, even after the assignments. We're in great shape to address these decisions that are upcoming. Real quick review of 3 of the most fundamental challenges facing the district. 1, continued decreases in enrollment will negatively impact both our foundation aid and our major title grants that are all based upon enrollment. At some point, we need to align our building staff to these lower enrollments. We need to address that, and we do it every year in the school-based budget process and in the regular budget process. I think this ARP process will put the focus on that a little bit more. And I'm confident working together, we can really address this fundamental issue, maybe for the first time in the district's history. And not believe it as a vague comment. It doesn't mean reducing any services to the students. It means providing them more efficiently. And we'll talk more about that as we get into the ARP-ESSER process. Second big point. During the last 2 fiscal years, we transferred $27 million out of the general fund to capital projects. As you just saw, there's an additional $24 million assigned. That's $51 million over a 3-year period. I think it's time to reflect for a minute, congratulate ourselves. That's a lot of money. And it's a lot of great projects. The commissary, both state, School 8, School 86, all high stadium. But you can reach a point where it starts negatively impacting your finances. We should revel in all those wonderful projects. Nothing like that has been done in decades. But there's a point where you need to stop. That's my point of view anyway. But anyway, any further emergency declarations could trigger a state audit of these projects. We got to be careful of that. Lastly, ARP-ESSER, it ends June of 2024. We have $90 million in expenditures being funded by ARP, 310 FTEs, the summer school and the after-school programs. That money does not fit into the general fund. I'm going to pick worst case. Say nobody wants to do anything. That's $90 million in expenditures with no revenue. That would eat up that $151 million that we just talked about in 18 months. So no action is not an alternative. Next slide. Andrew, next slide. There you go. So, we're in the strongest financial position ever. We're in a great position to address this challenge. In our planning, we can't count on increased funding from the federal, state, or city level next year. The state is facing its own budget shortfalls. For the federal bailout, just look at what's happening in the House of Representatives. Nothing's coming out of there. So we can't put that in our plan. We can't really plan on any significant amount of additional grant funding. We will use them as wisely as possible, and we'll continue to scour everything for additional grant money. But we should all remember that our existing grants, they're already being pressured by the increase in BTF contract costs and large increases in extra activity pay. That is something we can address, the extra activity next year. Again, to frame the issue, The $90 million in budget expenditures will be cut one way or another. If we don't have to cut them, which I know we will, cash balances will almost run to zero in 18 months. You start at $150 million, you spend $90 million a year with no revenue, that's what would happen. That's our unassigned cash would run out. The state would not approve or may not approve a budget that we give them that has a $130 million deficit. Worst case, it could trigger a bond default. Remember, we have very serious terms and conditions on our financial health and performance that's associated with our $455 million in outstanding bonds. Any and all that happens, a hard control board would be installed. They'd come in and cut $90 million. So I just wanted to frame it that no action is not a alternative. So next slide, Edna. It's a little small, I thought. An overview of the planning process. As I discussed with Mrs. Woods, we're just presenting here today the framework and some initial thoughts on how we're going about this. So we're going to begin the review and recommendation process with the cabinet members in early December. The objective is to either cut the ARPESR expenditure or to make offsetting cuts in the general fund and shift those items over. But we do have to reduce expenditures by $90 million. That $90 million is made up of two components, $60 million in non-staff expenditures and $30 million in FTE, personnel related, including the benefits. First thing,
say that one more time.
The $90 million in expenditures is made up of $60 million in non-staff expenditures and $30 million in personnel related expenditures. So the first step that we're going to do is review all non-staff budget items, approximately $60 million. There are actions that we can take that will immediately reduce that $90 million to a much more manageable level. Reduce the usage of 1/200th. You know, I think that's like frivolous. No, that's $10–15 million. No more unaidable capital projects. And I just reviewed the tremendous success we've had in capital projects. Like, take a pause as a district. No large-scale equipment upgrades. We've been doing them for 24 months straight. Cut contracts for programs with no measurable value. Reduce excessive PD or travel. None of these measures in that $60 million will harm anything. It doesn't increase class size. It does nothing to diminish the quality of our services. It's just we'll have to take a hard look and just say, get a new mindset other than the one for the past 24 months. This stuff isn't necessary right now and it doesn't impact the kids. Cut it. The second step, focus on the 310 FTEs. That's $30 million. The first step in this is we're working on providing the superintendent a detailed analysis of the positions that are in without ARPESR, by position, by school, by department, et cetera. We're going to give her the big picture overview. And then we're going to throw together data for the cabinet members that'll show the ARPESR positions, the beds data for the schools, and historical FTEs for some perspective. Keep in mind that this analysis will also include current vacancies. From a budget standpoint, we currently have more vacancies than we do positions within FTE. But what that means, if we were to use them, you cut the vacant position, you move the ARPESR over, everything's fine. But then we cannot go back and add more unbudgeted requests. It's cutting the vacancy and moving it out of the budget. So cabinet members will then make their recommendations on either cutting the ARPESR or offsetting cuts to the general fund, such as the vacancy. Then a summary report of the cabinet recommendations, they'll be provided to the superintendent to review. I'm extremely confident, again, we're in the strongest position of any district that's facing these issues. We need to address some fundamental issues. Staffing and enrollment, unaidable capital expenditures. We're going to come out of this stronger than ever with no impact on the kids and the quality of our program. So that's going to start in December. And the first step is to get start getting the superintendent updated on some information. She's been asking me for it. We will get that to her very soon. Admir, last slide. I just thought I'd take a couple minutes and update you on some projects that the finance department is working on in the current year. First of all, we're launching a new online payment software solution. This is going to increase revenue and reduce the risk of misappropriating cash across the district. We're initially going to roll it out to support fundraising for the Extra Classroom Fund. Andrew Oniji, the controller, is spearheading this project, and he started some training today. But potential future uses could include online ticket sales for athletics and other extracurricular events, technology fees, all kinds of things. But we're starting it out with the extra classroom funds, extra activity funds. Second thing we're doing is a new Munis-based invoicing and account receivable system. We actually implemented it this year, and we had our highest ever amount of invoicing to other districts for a variety of largely special ed related services. This was spearheaded up by Rachel Nyerlin and Adrian Block. It improves the volume, accuracy, and efficiency of district invoicing. It improves collection times, reduces write-offs. We are in the process of hiring an assistant collection person, all of which has been in the budget just unfilled. But we've been working very hard with HR, and we're making some real good progress. We're going to replace the paper-based overtime and extra activity system with an electronic process. This will establish controls to prohibit double dipping and other forms of overpayment. It'll improve the accuracy and efficiency of the process, and it will greatly reduce time on task and improve the reports for auditing purposes. I know it's been talked about before.
Yes.
Promise you it will get done. All I caution is the size of our district, the numerous unions, that all impacts these data tables that these payroll things are based on. That and the number of approval levels is everything when you're trying to manage it and change a process like this. We have everybody we need, all the expertise we need to get it done, and we're on our second meeting. I can give you a report out maybe at the December board meeting. Lastly, again, working with HR, we're making some good progress here. A robust internal audit department. We're in the process of hiring 2 internal audit positions. Again, both of them were in the approved budgets. So these efforts will be supplemented by Lumsden and McCormick and Dressler and Malecki. Andrew Oniji and I have a real vision for how this internal audit department will work. We can expect both cost savings and process improvements throughout the district. We're actually going to be communicating out what the audit plan is in the coming weeks. And this is not a gotcha program. We're not after anybody or anything. There's, well, you'll see it in the audit plan, like 10 areas that we think need to be reviewed for any healthy organization. Are people processing things according to state regs? Are they processing them efficiently and consistently and in conjunction with board policy? Along the way, I guarantee you we will save money, probably find a few things that are wrong, but it's really all about process improvement and training to our staff. Thank you very much.
Well, you covered some very significant items. When I looked at the report and I said, my God, a $37 million deficit.
I know what you're going to say.
And I asked about that, and you indicated that the impact of the BTF salaries, extra activity and benefits, that's $40 million that came into our budget because of that.
That's correct.
Because of that one contract. That's the deficit right there. 40 million increase in salaries because of the contract, and we can't push it off into our ESSA. It's got to come out of the general fund.
Yep.
But then when you went over this late budget supervision, extra 1.2 million,
Yep.
I'm like, what's that all about? And you're saying because we have the 3-tier bell system that people have to work late, and for the extra learning times, the staff has to work late. So that's 1.2 million and 1.9. You're saying $3 million because of our shift in the bell time? Is that my understanding?
No, not the shift in the bell time. It's even with the shift to the 3-tier bell time, which has shown some improvements, kids are waiting a long time, longer than we expected at certain schools, and supervisors have to be there. And this was submitted by the department as a very conservative estimate. Both of those items could come in lower, but that's not how we budget here.
Well, I do believe in conservative budgeting so we don't run a deficit. But then we got a $1.5 million bill for New York State saying they did a 7-year review and we owe tuition for the charter school?
It's like typically they do a 1-year review and that's it. They had skipped numerous years, but they've never gone that far back to adjust the rates that we've paid to these agencies, so we have to make it up. It happens almost every year, but to a much lower level. This is just like 7 years of retro. That's why we have contingencies and everything in the budget. This thing normally would have just been absorbed in one of those contingencies. But I wanted to put that on the list just to show, we're so big and complex. Stuff like that happens. Nobody's fault. It's just a New York State rate setting unit went back and audited their own books.
Okay.
Agencies. Agencies.
That wasn't charter schools.
No, not
Was
charter.
that charter schools?
No, this has nothing to do with charters. It's
Thank you.
payments for agencies.
Tuition rate increases for agencies?
Agencies. Students with disabilities who attend agencies.
And they adjusted it over 7 years and hit us with a $1.5 million bill now.
Yeah, it's like we'll have to make adjusted payments to, I think there's 13 agencies we utilize, and we'll have to make payments to them.
And then you're saying our student count, you're anticipating it's going to drop 100 just this year?
Yes.
Okay. I see Terry shoot his hand up, so I'm gonna.
I should say that 100 student drop is the lowest drop in 5 years. It's much less of a drop than we've experienced. The prior years were 500, 600, 700, 800
Okay.
every year.
4 minutes. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I have a question. I have a couple things. So the first student,
we're having a problem with the like you had said, with the overtime with our staff. So where does first student come in to play here? That if they're short drivers or they're arriving to schools late, we're paying for them for the issues that they're facing.
There should be I'd have to double check for you, Terry, but there should be a penalty clause within the contract, but I'm not so sure about this most recent contract. I will just double check with you.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter if they're providing the service and we're incurring that additional, that doesn't make sense. But my other question is, what is our operating capacity of students? I've been reading a lot about Rochester. Their operating capacity was 37,000. They only have 21,000 enrolled. And they, on October 20th, they took a look at, they had too many, they had, I think they closed 11 buildings. What is our capacity?
I don't have a number, but we face those same challenges as them, the same underlying demographics and capacity. I don't have our numbers. Okay. But we have a lot of schools that have 300-400 kids in them. We all know that.
Okay, I was concerned when I've been reading about what's happening in Rochester. And that's something that's...
We're not immune to any, especially New York State urban districts, nor do we have any problems that are unique. We're just larger than most of them.
But those are all things that we will have to consider once we take a look at, where we are starting, it'll be early December. And we do have to look at buildings where there's capacity, but the enrollment has consistently over time been low, but it's not easy either when we start making decisions about closing schools. That's a hard conversation.
Very, very tough.
Yeah. So there's a lot to consider.
We have Terrence Hurd. His hand is up. Mr. Hurd, Board Member Hurd.
Thank you, Chairwoman Woods. I just hear the conversation about closing schools or buildings. That's something we can't do because we can't leave that open to any other possibilities for any other school or opportunity for other organizations to move into those facilities. And we really need to work on, as Dr. Chandra Williams been doing, was getting the word out about the programs that this district offer and getting children back into the Buffalo Public Schools, which I appreciate. I was on a conversation with a board member from a district in Michigan, and they have 15 buildings and they're closing 4 of them, and maybe 5. And I don't want to get into that structure also, which we're trying to obtain more property so that we can have an easement for our kids, because it's different here in Buffalo because with all our kids being on similar bus lines, we have that confusion that exists between the kids and different schools that's in not agreement with one another. We have things along the lines of too many schools in the very congested bus lines. So that's one thing let's work on. Now let's just going back. Now we started the Little Scholars Program with Say Yes. Would that be affected any kind of way right now? You mentioned that, and the Little Scholars. What's the position on that right now? I thought we was looking to expand that program.
It'll be expanded with 1 extra school next year. It'll be a total of 8, which was the agreed upon number for the pilot. And we'll be shifting the district cost over, transitioning it from ESSER into a couple of different sources after that.
Okay. So we're looking to maintain. Sorry, Dr. Williams.
It's in the budget. So we've got our 4-year budget plan, and that's something we don't want to say we've started it and we're cutting it out. But at some point, we will have to start to have some really challenging conversations because we've been able to do so much good stuff with this our ESSER monies. Everything's good and great, but we won't be able to keep everything the way that it is. So we want to start with those non-FTE things like travel, like looking at overtime and where it's been at 1/200th. Those are some low-hanging fruit things, because we want to cut as less as we can close to the classroom. We don't want to have to delve into cutting services in classrooms for our children.
Okay, that's very, very important for this community and our children. And also, I know hearing rumors and phone calls about the conditional rec, the CAO, and what will happen with that program, that we might want to bring in more low scholar programs here into our district. So whatever we can do to fight to get funding for that, please let us know how we can move forward with that. Of course, I've been promoting playgrounds in the schools in the city, among our schools. So where are we at with that? I know we said $5 million was allocated for it.
500,000 additional very recently to finish the installation of, I think, 3 playgrounds.
5 to finish 3 playgrounds.
Correct.
Okay. And we have a scope on the other playgrounds. Is that something that's obtainable still? Or is it something that we need to?
We don't have it on our radar, but the budget process is coming up, and we'll consider everything within the context of the presentation that was just given.
Okay. And so another thing that,
I'm sorry. It's an organization called Kaboom. And in Georgia, they it's almost like 8 Days of Hope, where they go out and, in underserved communities, they help build playgrounds and they help. That's kind of what their mission is. So I'll be looking a little more, into that to see if that's something that in Buffalo we can take advantage of. But we'll have to do, innovative things like that to try to keep, keep those services and supports for our children.
Okay, I'm not going to hold it up because I know we went over a lot today. I know a lot of board members have questions, but the last thing that I'm just going to make reference to is we spoke about a principle about having calm rooms inside each of the schools, to where they can calm a student down if they're going to a mental health issue or problem, and that was something that was supposed to be included into the budget, but I don't think it was included in the last budget, but it was something that we said that we could look into adapt to the schools after meeting with the principals. Where are we with that? And if there are any other, private sources we can get to help fund these calm rooms, can we look into those possibly, or grants?
That's exactly where, where we'll go, is looking. All of our schools have community partners. We've got a document that's got hundreds of partners in there, and all don't have to be elaborate. Some calm rooms, it might just be a few $100 or $1,000 to just, get some bean bags and some paint and that kind of thing. But we're going to have to, lean on our partners a little bit to help with some of that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you again. And I know the board members have questions, so thank you so much. Thank you for a great presentation.
Okay. Remember when this presentation started, Mr. Barnes said, we have to align our building staff to enrollments. I asked specifically for some examples, and one of the examples was we have classes, special ed classes, with 1 child and 2 teachers. We have to be more efficient than that. That's the kind of decisions that we wanted to deliver services, but I would think most people would agree 1 child and 2 teachers is not an efficient arrangement. I see Board Member McCosey's hand up.
Thank you, Chairwoman Woods. Thank you, Mr. Barnes. It's a great presentation, and it really got my wheels turning, especially around how you're looking to cut costs in the future. And I'm looking specifically at PD. To me, that considering we have a less amount of teachers, more vacancies, that's a great place to start. But I'm also, Dr. Williams, I'm concerned with how much feedback I get around PD, and how some people, you got people who still have the opportunity to just kind of sign in and call it a day. And then you have, we have so many things that we offer, which is amazing, but I don't feel like we have enough people really partaking in everything that we offer. So with cutting that short, I also would like to see where our resources can be put into making sure that these PDs are actually being followed, to cut cut off whatever we're not using, and even hold folks accountable. And I'm a great teacher advocate, but I'm going to tell the truth. If you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you need to be held accountable for that, because my kids and the children in this community count on you learning whatever it is you signed up to learn. So I feel like PD is a huge, it can definitely be cut as far as cost, but we also have to look into the 101, start from the ground around how we, go about monitoring PD. And I also, with the extra classroom, I don't know if I have the term right. Does that cover, what is that covering? Is that literally like we're putting extra classrooms in buildings, or are you covering like some of the supplies that teachers get, making sure every school has what they need? Like, I'm not sure what that was.
Every school has to have an extra classroom activity account to take receipts and make purchases. It's probably about $2 million across the 60 schools, but it's highly monitored. It's also, students have to be involved. It's a chance to engage them in a financial way. This will just it'll eliminate the cash and make everything electronic.
That's beautiful. That's actually what I was kind of hoping to hear when it comes to that. And the last thing I'd like to say is, I've been saying this since day one. I know it's not a popular opinion, but I've been in enough of the SST meetings and the school-based management meetings where we're being held as a district responsible for everything that's being spent, but sometimes the autonomy in the schools to be able to get what they want doesn't match with what it is we need to do in order to hit the goals that you're looking to hit and that we put in front of you. So I just want to put out there that, I don't know how the power needs to be set, whether it's, elementary school, whether it's by grade, whether it's, elementary and high school, but I don't want to upset any principals, but, autonomy in the schools and what is being spent in the schools, and to have, a bunch of positions filled, yet you don't have your math teacher in place. Some of these things that I'm hearing it's a little concerning. So however it is you go about it, I would love to just put out there that monitoring the spending, we always end up picking up the flack for what's not being offered in schools. And some schools have this and others don't, and we bring it back down to the SBMT and the SST meetings. And I just feel like that is also huge when it comes to budget. How we monitor, this is what needs to be in your class, and I see you don't have it here, but this is what needs to be in your class. I'd love to see, how that looks. Okay, I'm done.
It's good comments. Thank you.
I don't see any other board members' hands, so I wanted to point out, as I pointed out to our CFO, that when you say this 90 million that we spent on our ESSER, the 60 million of it is one-time expenditures. There's a difference between saying we have 30 million in staff that we're trying to save. 30 million makes sense if we do it efficiently. But when you say the 60 million that we spent are things like equipment, maybe those COVID things, whiteboards, whatever.
Yep.
One-time expenditures, we don't have to spend that again. That's an easy choice if you do some good management reviews and say, okay, we bought all these whiteboards, we bought this, we bought that. That's one time, and I'm saying it's not going to be as difficult, or it shouldn't be as difficult to say, hey, I bought you a whiteboard, you don't need another one.
Thank you, Mr. Woods.
Sister Woods?
Yes?
Just one last thing. I would like to investigate into the $9 million that the city of Buffalo received in interest off the ARPA funds that from the shared bank account. And I think we need some of that money or that money back to the district to help out, with our costs. So I would like to see where we're at with that and reaching out to find out what we need to do to obtain that money for the district and our children.
Yes, that's a key project, especially given the situation we're facing. But I just want to point out that in the 60 million, there are items that are included, talking about the 1/20th that we had to pay staff. They don't get the hourly rate or amount that they used to get. Now they get a higher amount. And we're not, to my awareness, tied to continuing that in the next year. And that's a $10-15 million item that we have to have the guts, the wisdom to make that decision and say, no, we're gonna save teachers' positions and not all these extras. Mr. Barnes, you can comment on that.
Thank you for those comments in the spirit. Yeah, thank you.
Paulette, Sharon Belton Cotman had her hand up as well.
Board President?
Thank you, Chair and Chairwoman Woods. I have a couple of questions. So I need some clarity here. Is the Buff State Da Vinci project reimbursable? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. And considering that, has it been approved by the state considering that we have a lower enrollment?
Yeah. Yes, there's still some formal paperwork to be done because of the nature of the transaction, but financially, the building aid portion is all but done. Yes. Yes.
And so how much of that is aidable?
20, Superintendent, help me, we're going over it.
No, what percentage?
24 million. 98.5%.
98.5. Okay. All right. Do you have a definite plan for increasing enrollment in this district? Have we put together, Madam Superintendent, a definite plan for increasing enrollment in this district?
We have, and I think that, the data that Chief Barnes shared is I think evident that we are getting our kids back. We've done a lot with marketing the district. And I believe that it is beginning to take hold. We're being more transparent with the data. So, I mean, I can't say that I have a written plan, but, certainly being on the radio, billboards that we're doing, being visible in the community, making sure that all of our classrooms have highly qualified teachers and the recruitment efforts that we've done and announcing that. So I think what has been shown is that over the last couple of years, we're losing fewer and fewer kids.
Yes.
Whether it is our athletic events, that are happening, there's a whole litany of things I think that are bringing children back into our Buffalo Public Schools.
Okay, so I do recommend that a plan be put together, purposely put together, that involves every one of your cabinet members, as well as every principal, every staff member in this district, because we're in open enrollment right now, right? And I've received more literature at my house from other schools about enrolling students than I've received from Buffalo Public Schools. So in other words, we have people actively, we're sending out mailings and sending out stuff to get people to enroll in their schools, but I don't see it, the same process. I've said before, people do not know about our CTE program. They don't know. Okay, so if they don't know about it, and we have an excellent program, they don't know about it, how can they know to enroll students? So I really think that we really need to look at that. I was expecting something, some sort of, when I see that these are efforts that you are making to try to cut costs, travel is one of them. Travel is not a huge amount, but overtime is. You understand what I'm saying? So what all of this boils down to me is efficiency. Are we running every department efficiently? I'm talking about all the way down to into the schools where the hot water faucet may be leaking. You know, I'm talking about pure efficiency to make sure that everyone is doing what they're supposed to do. We've just passed a major contract with one of our social emotional supporters who don't have staff. My question was, how do we determine how they get paid? We just passed $600,000 to them. Meanwhile, I'm being told that in many of our schools, they don't have proper staffing. So I think there needs to be, and I don't know, seems like something was done years ago about something like this when Pam Brown was here, about some sort of an efficiency. But I think Gene Chasen might have been a part of it at the time with Say Yes. I don't know, but we really need to look at what efficiency looks like. Okay, because if Cindy had not taken the trip that she took recently out to the Council of Great City Schools, we would not have the information that she's about to deliver to the board, because of course it was a Council of Great City Schools and what are big schools doing in this country. And she's about to bring some things forward that will help us be more efficient as a board. So I'm really concerned. This Fawcett Fields, what happened to the money that was promised to us by the alumni? That initial conversation.
This is one half. This is our part of the total purchase price.
That's our part. And so
Yes.
has it been determined how that field is going to be used?
I do not think so. I don't have any
It
knowledge.
hasn't come before the board, and there were some community concerns about that. Okay. And this meeting with the controller, and not to have the conversation about interest owed this district. I'm glad y'all had a good meeting. Maybe we should have had somebody from the board in there who could have asked the questions you didn't want to ask. But we want our interest. Okay, we want our interest back. We need it at this point. And so I'm just looking at this, and I'm really concerned, because what I'm being told is that if we are more efficient as a district, we will save millions and millions of dollars. I'm talking about stuff that's being thrown out that shouldn't even be thrown out. Books that are no longer being used. We just got to look at what efficiency looks like in this district. Yeah. We have to. You're tightening your belt, but you can come up with suggestions. But first of all, I want to know what's going on with overtime in this district. Dr. Tiggs did a report. The last report this board got was in 2017 on overtime. Okay. Dr. Tiggs asked for it.
I think both you and board member Woods and CFO Barnes are all saying the same thing, that the efficiency piece is going to be huge. I got to say, I'm not surprised that you're getting literature from charters. I think that the work that we're doing is causing them to level up. I'm seeing they're putting up billboards now. They're on the radio now, because I think, we have been very aggressive and not shy about what we're doing, the good work we're doing, and that, we can best service our children. So I'm not surprised that they're sending information.
Well, I'm glad to hear, but people still ask me over and over and over again, when are we going to put our CTE programs back in place?
We did put a billboard up on CTE. I just have to find out where it is, because we've got so many.
I haven't seen it, but I know the Challenger is available, and we're not using that newspaper to get our word out. We're not using it. Okay, why wouldn't we put that article? Rob Harris did a fantastic presentation not too long ago about our CTE program that should be in an article and it should be in the paper so that everyone could know. It could be on our website so everyone could know the work that he's doing in CTE. And I'm just concerned that we're doing better than what we were before you came on. I have to give you kudos for that. You've hired Jeff. He's doing a fantastic job, but there's still much more work to do to get our story out. Because if we're waiting on the Buffalo News or some of these news people to do it, we'll be dragging out stories for 3 and 4 weeks that should have been covered and moved on. So we got to do our
the Challenger. I'm interested in doing a weekly editorial. I don't mind writing something or having staff, we can submit something, but I didn't get any response. And I did submit something and it didn't make it in. So, we've got some work to do to just make sure maybe we didn't get it to the right person. I don't know. But
I think we need to have you need to have your Jeff person. Jeff, Jeff is the our communication person. Have him reach out directly to her and talk to her. I did have a conversation with her, and she's willing to work with us. However, I do think that we have not, even with marketing our open enrollment, I don't think that the word has been out as strong as it should be. Should be a major campaign that starts in August and runs, in my opinion, until the end of that to let people know why they should bring their children to Buffalo Public Schools. And if we depend on the news to do it, they're only going to hear the negative stuff because that's what they're trying to. They read if you bleed. A guy told me that the other day. That's why we're always in the news. That people buy the news. If you read, they only read when you bleed. So Buffalo is always put out there bleeding in order to get more people to watch and listen to the news. So thank you for that. But yeah, I'm interested in having being a part of a conversation about efficiency because I still think there are things that we should be selling. We should be billing more for it. We're not billing. Our special ed services, we are entitled to income from those special ed services, okay? But if we don't bill them, we won't get them, okay? So we're providing services to charter schools, and there's things that we can be billing for, and we haven't been billing for them. And we're doing it within our own children. We can be billing the state for, and we haven't been billing. So we need to start looking at how we can make some money for this district, big time. Because I'm not pleased with talking about laying off people after giving everybody hefty salaries last year. So you got to know where I'm coming from. Children first. So I'm just letting you know. Nobody was disagreeing with paying all that money. It was a great idea. Now all of a sudden it's a bad. We're in a situation where we're going to be struggling. So I want us to take a look at that. Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. Jim, great report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Barnes, did you want to mention some of the revenue increasing activities that your staff did? You did present it at the last board meeting. I know you're going after more revenues.
Yeah, we had our highest revenue year ever. I think it was well over $7 million in invoicing to other districts, agencies, and charters.
Okay.
So we have a very robust invoicing program where we scrub enrollment, scrub services provided. We invoice on actual cost, which is higher than the state rates. So we have a pretty good effort.
Do you think we should sue or we should go after the state for trying to make us pay back money? They did not help us get the back money that we're entitled to for the charter schools. Why are they now coming forward telling us that we have to back pay some money?
Yeah, they do this every year. It's called a rate adjustment. It's just the length of period that they went back and did it for.
So can we challenge their formula? Is there any holes in it is what I'm looking for?
I do not think so.
Okay.
Does this rate adjustment also include the monies that we have to pay for when they send children back that we're not receiving?
No, it's another issue.
Should be tied together. If they sending kids back and we got to educate them without receiving no monies, that should be tied into it. Definitely.
CFO Barnes, I want to commend you on replacing the current paper-based overtime extra activity system. We've had several complaints from staff for not getting paid their extra monies for 6 months. Terry Shooter's brought a lot of these things to our attention. So I'm glad to see that that your staff is working on an electronic process so we can eliminate some of these problems, because it hurts staff morale and it doesn't make us look good when we can't pay people according to what the contract says. So I commend you on that. Do any other board members have any other questions? Mary Shooter.
I just would like to echo, I'm very happy to see what's happening with the new system.
It's not done yet, Terry.
I'll be watching. Thanks.
All right.
Madam Superintendent, I don't see any more board questions, so I turn it back to you to close this out.
All righty. I also want to echo, how happy I am about getting folks paid more timely. And I also want to give a shout out to our CAI department along with HR, because they've also enhanced the time between interviewing and getting people hired and getting people into schools and calling back. That's huge. So that's a big thing. And Jeff just texted me because he wanted me to let the board know that, and I shared it at the presentation that we did with NISBA, but, the Wednesday with Williams, we're getting tens of thousands, and we got 87,000 views for the one with WASED. That's a lot. That's a lot. But we're getting tens of thousands of views, weekly. We're tracking that information. So that's just another way that we're trying to get the word out about the great things that we're doing. And that's all I have. It was a great report.
Okay, the last thing I want to mention is that the Buffalo Urban League annual gala will be held on Saturday, November 11th at 6 p.m. at the Buffalo Convention Center. And that item, our board president, vice president, will be bringing to the table at our next board meeting so we can support the Urban League gala as they give scholarships to our young people. With that, if there's no other comments, have a blessed night in the Finance and Ops Committee.
All right, good night.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. CFO.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Thank you, Superintendent.
All righty.
Yes,
Have
thank
a
you
good night.
so
Be
much,
safe.
Transparent Superintendent.